Hi there, welcome back to the Alban allotment. What an absolutely glorious, glorious day it is today. It's a bank holiday weekend, so it's a nice long weekend, and I've got lots and lots of jobs planned for today. Also, I need to go and check the greenhouse on plot 12 to see whether last night's frost did any damage to our chilies, aubergines, and tomatoes. But according to our thermometer in there, it only got down to 5 or 4 point something in there Celsius, and hopefully it's all okay, but I haven't actually checked that yet. Some of our potatoes did get knocked back by the frost though last night, and everything else in the greenhouse over there seems to be alright. The dahlias are not a fussed at all, and most other stuff like the broad beans, obviously they're all completely okay. But yeah, I need to go and check what the state of things are in the greenhouse, but I'll do that later. And if it's a catastrophe, I'll tell you another time, because in today's video what I want to talk about is exactly why we have an allotment and what it means to us. So there's kind of three main reasons, I guess, why people have an allotment. One is to give you something to do, two is to try and save money, and three is to grow stuff to eat. There's probably more reasons as well, some of which we have as well, I guess, but I feel like they're the three main ones, right? But for us, saving money is kind of the lowest reason for us to have an allotment. Obviously, if we get to save money long term, that's fantastic, but it's not the main reason why we have an allotment, which is why we buy gadgets, which is why we've got solar panels and cameras, and we've bought a greenhouse and that kind of thing. Like, for us, it's not necessarily about saving money. In the long term, like in maybe 20 years' time, when we've got everything that we need and we don't feel like we need to buy anything, then maybe we'll start to save money. But in the short term, we're definitely not saving money. For us, like, the most important thing is that it is a hobby. It's something for us to do and something that we absolutely love doing. We just love growing stuff, you know, just seeing the process of growing stuff and learning stuff and taking it into the next year and taking a piece of land as well and just really improving it. So for us, it's very much about like having something to do. It's a hobby, which is why we have like that indoor growing setup that we've got, which has got some fairly expensive lights. But for us, that's okay, because during January and February, there's not much else for us to be doing. And if we weren't at the allotment doing stuff like preparing the beds or anything like that, we'd just be sitting in front of Netflix or our PlayStation or something and not really doing anything with ourselves. So, like, right at the very top of the list for us, it's a hobby. It's gets us out of the house. I mean, we have a dog, so obviously we get out of the house for walks, but the allotment really gets us out of the house for like prolonged periods of time, all year as well, because there's obviously always stuff to do. Oh, crow is trying to attack me. So yeah, that's kind of number one reason. Number two reason, obviously, for us is gives us something to eat. So we really do like to cook, and we know what we like as well. So we get to try and grow the things that we really love in abundance, like tomatoes, for example, to make Italian tomato sauce, as well as cucumbers and squash and chilies, which I absolutely love growing. It's my absolute favourite thing. And having this much land and this much indoor growing space with the 3 greenhouses that we now have means that we can grow loads and loads of chilies and make loads of hot sauce. This year specifically is about growing a couple of varieties, but in abundance, so we can make a lot of hot sauce and or whatever we want to make out of the things that we're growing. But then once we've done that this year, because we've been knocked back a few years with the flooding and stuff, we've not really had great crops of stuff. And because we were growing so many different varieties of stuff over the past couple of years, the stuff that did work, we didn't get a lot of it. So this year is all about an abundance of a few different things. But then next year, we can go back to experimenting again. And that's just really, really exciting to me. And then we get to cook with all this lovely stuff. And eventually, obviously, get to try new stuff as well that you wouldn't normally try, because you don't really want to buy it from a shop, because you don't want to spend the money on something that you don't know if you like it. But now we can grow stuff that we've never tried before and give it a go. So like artichokes, for example. I've never tried artichokes, but seeing some cooked on YouTube the other day made me really want to grow some. So maybe next year we'll get some artichokes as well. And then third in the list for us is saving money. So like I say, we're probably not going to save any money in the short term, but it's really not about that for us. And I know that for a lot of people that is what it's about, and that's great. Everybody has a different reason for having an allotment. But for us, having to spend a little bit of money on compost or water butts to treat ourselves, or a greenhouse that we can try and avoid blight, you know, for us, it's not necessarily about saving money. But I do think long term, if we stay here in St Albans and stay on these plots, eventually we probably will have a really good system. We'll have our own compost and we won't need to buy any more greenhouses and that kind of thing. And eventually everything will just be kind of ticking over nicely. And eventually maybe we'll recoup some of the money. And you never know as well, we might earn money from YouTube one day. Like, our subscriber count is way too low at the moment to be earning any money from YouTube. So even if you're getting shown ads, we're not making any money from that or anything at the moment. You need to have at least 1,000 subscribers, I think it is, and a certain amount of viewing hours people are watching per year before you can even begin to make any money from YouTube. So we're not even making money from this either. So yeah, making money or saving money or making money from the allotment is like lowest on the list of those three things that are the usual three things. But I guess there's a couple of other, maybe at least one other thing for us about the allotment is that we haven't bought our own home yet. So we've moved about quite a few times. So if you've been following along, you'll know that in the last house that we lived in, the landlord sold the house, so we had to leave. And unfortunately, exactly the same thing happened in the house before that we'd only moved out of 6 months prior. They also sold the house that we were living in throughout most of the pandemic, which had a really nice garden, but it wasn't our garden. And anytime you put anything into the ground, so I put some of my ferns into the ground in the houses, into the garden in one of the houses a couple of years ago, and I could have dug them up, but we had to end up leaving quite a lot of stuff there. And having an allotment kind of turns it into a more permanent garden. I know that we're renting the land off the council, but this is more permanent than the houses that we're living in because we're moving about so much. And these feel more like our gardens than our actual gardens do because we're in rented accommodation. There's only so many changes you can make. Like the house that we've just moved into at the moment doesn't even have any borders along the grass, it's just grass. So we're going to have to ask to get borders put in if we want them, or we have to buy, raised beds that we can put on the patio bit, that kind of thing. Whereas at the allotment, we've got all this space and we're kind of free, roughly, to do what we want with it. Obviously, we have the issue of people walking across it, which you don't get in your own garden, and that kind of thing, and people getting stuck on the bend when they drive around too close. But they're all different issues. But generally, for us, these are our gardens, which is why we're going to start to grow more flowers, hopefully, as well, once we get a little bit more settled and our jobs, the bigger jobs that we have to do are kind of done, which should be next year. I'm really, really looking forward to next year's. I don't want to wish this year away because we're actually having a pretty good spring and I'm hoping that we have a really good summer as well. And you never know, this plot may never flood again and then we'll all be completely fine and we won't ever have to do any cleaning up and it will just be weeding and sowing and planting and mulching and that kind of thing next year. That's what I'm really, really hoping. But we'll just have to see what happens at the end of this year. But definitely on plot 12, by the end of this year, most of the really big jobs will be done. And next year will just be about growing stuff. And I'm really, really looking forward to that. And then we can start growing flowers. So I've always wanted to grow straw flowers. So we've just bought some seeds, which is really cool. So I'm really looking forward to finally growing some straw flowers. And we've just really bulked up our stock of dahlias as well. So I divided loads of the dahlias we had 2 tubers of dahlias that have survived the floods, but the middle of them were quite rotted, so they did some emergency surgery on them at the end of last year before packing them away, and just basically divided them into 3. And it looks like both of the tubers, all 3 parts from both of the tubers have sprouted, which is really cool. So that we've got 3 times the amount of plants that we had before. And we also bought loads more dahlias in the sale that Wilco randomly had in the middle of spring. I don't really understand why they've discounted their bulbs, but I've taken advantage of it and bought quite a few more dahlias. It makes the dahlias like less than £1 per tuber, which I think is really good value. They were £3.50 for 3, but then it was 30-something% off, and now they're like £1 or something per tuber, and it's just really good value. So I bought loads of those and I've been potting those up as well. The ones that I bought yesterday, I went back and bought some more, obviously. The ones that I bought yesterday is actually one of the jobs that I have to do today, is to pot those up. And then I'm going to check on the chilies with the frost from last night, and hopefully they're okay. And then I need to pot those up as well. Just got all the pots in that. Anyway, now I'm rambling and not really talking about why we have an allotment, but yeah, that's kind of the core of it, really. So it's about like improving a piece of land, having something to do. It's a hobby, So for some people they go skiing, like some people are into collecting models, some people are into doing painting. You know, it's different for everybody, and usually with a hobby, when it's something that you're really passionate about, I mean, we come down here almost every single day and do something almost every single day, or we just come down here to have lunch, and it's somewhere where we really love being, and we're happy to spend a little bit of money on it because it makes us happy, and that's kind of the core of it. Anyway, I think I'll probably stop rambling about this now. I hope that kind of explains a little bit about why we have our allotment. So I know I've talked about why we have two in the past. If you haven't seen that video, recommend it. It was the first one that I did, and it talks about why we have two plots because of this one flooding and stuff. But I never really talked about exactly why we even bothered applying for an allotment. I just think it's quite cool to talk about because it is different for absolutely everybody, and I also want people to understand why we sometimes spend some money and why we're not kind of in that same mindset that a lot of people are, where you're trying to spend as little as possible. Obviously, if something's free and we see it on like the reuse group, local reuse group or something, and it's worth taking, then absolutely. Like the other day, my mum, well, I guess this doesn't make it free because we had to hire a van, but my mum is moving out from a house, so we hired a van and basically cleared out all of the wood, loads of just bits and bobs of some staging and like an old dibber and like some bricks. Oh my god, the bricks, I completely forgot about the bricks. It's like 300 and something bricks that we took out from my mum's garden, which are obviously so good to have on allotment, even just weighing stuff down. But I've got so many plans. Gonna make paths in the greenhouse, gonna do a little base for the cold frame, got so many plans for them. The floor in here, if it keeps flooding, is going to be replaced with bricks, hopefully. Anyway, I am rambling again, but yeah, we're obviously in that same mindset there. Like, we do want to try and use free stuff if it's available, but I also don't mind buying some knitting. I don't mind buying some lights if it gives us something to do in January. Anyway, I'll stop rambling even more now. So that's it from this video. I need to go and check on those chilies. They're worrying me a little bit now that I've seen the potatoes. So from me, Sergio and Poppy, take the very best of care, and hopefully we get to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.